Hi everybody, my name is Megan Holcomb and I'm going to be presenting on the second wave of feminism for my presentation today. The second wave of feminism occurred between the dates of 1960 and 1980 roughly, depending on what sources you're reading from. However, this wave was essentially an attack on the traditional family. So the leading activists at the time looked around, saw your basic stay-at-home mom, working in her home, taking care of kids, being a wife, running a life in their home, and said, the world does not value this, and therefore for this role to be forced upon women while men go out and do whatever it is that they want to do, equals oppression for all women, and this needs to be remedied, and we need to liberate these women. Now, at the time, there were many women who were actually very contented in their role. They knew what was expected of them. They probably even saw the value in their day-to-day work. We all get tired of dishes and laundry from time to time, but still they saw the life that they were able to bring to a family and their role as a significant one. And the activists would look at these women and say, oh, that poor thing, she's been brainwashed and she must be liberated and enlightened before she can actually truly be happy, before she can experience real freedom. And so this need for freedom drove the feminist movement during the second wave. The question was asked, what do we do to free women from housework and motherhood? And the answer came back that we must be completely, as women, completely independent from men, completely self-sufficient, including financially. This presented an issue for many women because at the time, even though they were working very hard, it was usually inside of their home, and their husband was the primary and maybe sole financial earner for the family. And so the feminist movement was pushing women into the workplace, basically telling them that they had been oppressed and that they needed to dream and they needed to have goals just like a man, that they should leave behind the work that they had been doing for something that was more valuable and substantial, that would give them the sort of social status that men had. And so as many women were entering the workplace and attempting to earn a wage for the first time in their lives, or maybe just since they became a wife and a mom, the outlook on the traditional family and the way that children were cared for, the way the home was cared for, greatly shifted and began to change. There were many books written at the time that were written on these topics. People were consuming these books. There were also riots and protests that were broadcast through the media and on the radios. And women who had maybe previously been in the group of contented and happy stay-at-home moms, after a time of hearing these messages and intaking this content, thought to themselves, I am unhappy, I am oppressed, wow, maybe they're right, maybe I should be looking for something more out of my life than what I'm experiencing right now. And it left them with a lot of questions. Another thing that characterized the second wave of feminism was basically a move toward sexual liberty or sexual freedoms for women, a sexualized woman. And so promiscuity, prostitution even, eroticism, homosexuality, these were all praised by the feminist movement, by the activists and the writers at the time, as being good and something that we should even like aspire to. The way that women dressed, they were told, nobody can control you. Don't let anyone tell you what you can and can't do with your own body. And if it makes you feel good, you should indulge your desires. If you like the way you look, regardless of how much skin or lack thereof, I guess, you're showing, you should be free to wear whatever you want. And so these were really huge issues that entered the scene surrounding the second wave of feminism during that time. I believe that we now, 50 to 60 years after the beginning of this movement, are seeing the aftermath of the messages and the values that were being pushed then, with a complete, 180 turn away from like morality and character and fidelity. We see a lot of issues that have even affected people in the church. I want to talk about a few of these. I do want to say that obviously there's sin in the hearts of man, and I'm not trying to blame all of these issues solely on feminism or the women who led in the activism of these things. However, I do believe that these are messages that Satan has used, lies that Satan has used to creep in and affect women and families in our church today. So obviously, even within the church, we see higher divorce numbers, sex outside of marriage. We see single parents, we see grandparents raising young children for their children. And honestly, the landscape of the family can look any number of ways today. You can't just expect that there's a wife and a husband and the children that they've had in this marriage. There's often multiple marriages, half siblings, this situation here, that one there. It's really difficult to see, and it honestly is exactly what these activists were looking for to disintegrate the traditional family mold. And so you don't know what you're looking at anymore. Another issue that I've even personally experienced in our church is that of male bashing or husband bashing. It's not abnormal whenever a group of women are in a group together for someone to kind of tongue-in-cheek bring up a story about a male in her life, be it a husband, a father, a son, maybe a brother, just another brother in Christ, or some male at work, and to joke about the way that they did something or their inadequacy in a certain area. For example, a woman might say, "Oh my goodness, you wouldn't believe I left my husband for like 30 minutes yesterday to run to the Walmart, and when I got back, he couldn't even find this," or "You wouldn't believe he had done this," or "I just can't even, I can't count on anybody, I just have to do it all myself." I believe that this kind of speech is a direct effect of the messages that we have been fed for years and years, that men are useless, worthless, lazy. We don't really need them. We can do it better on our own anyway. And I believe we need to be really careful with this sort of speech in the church. It is emasculating and it is dishonoring. God made us to be helpers. He put Adam in the garden, gave him a job, and said it's not good for him to do this alone. He needs a helper. He needs an encourager. He needs somebody to walk alongside of him. And I believe that some of the issues we see in spiritual leadership in our homes and in our churches today is the direct cause of this movement of feminism, but also our lack of fulfillment in the role that God gave us. So if we have a man in our lives and there is something that we find left wanting in his leadership, I believe that we should begin looking at ourselves and saying, am I tearing him down because of this, or am I trying to encourage him in his role? Am I trying to be the helper that God created me to be in this role? And so the world wants to tell us who we are. They want to tell us that we are viewed as the second sex, that we are oppressed, and that we need liberation. They want to tell us who we should be. They want to tell us that we should be whatever we want to be, or we should be something more than just a mom. They want to tell us how we feel. They want to say that we feel imprisoned, that we feel unhappy in the role that's being pushed on us, that we feel angry. So what do we do with this? What do we do with these messages? As I was reading over the material to present to you all, I just very strongly felt that we need to know the Word. We need to be in the Word and we need to know the Word, because that is the filter for, it's the lens that we filter all of these cultural messages through. If we're not in our Word, if we don't know the Word, and we're soaking in all of these messages from the world around us that is broken and that doesn't see clearly, then we will begin ourselves not to see clearly. We will hear their messages and then turn around and think, I am incredibly discontent. I am unhappy. And it's all because our mindset is not being filtered through the right lens. We need to be in prayer. We need to be in prayer for ourselves. We need to ask the Lord for conviction in the areas that we are falling short in our God-given roles as helpers and as encouragers to the men in our lives. And we need to pray for the men in our lives. We need to pray that God would give them boldness and that He would equip them to lead in the ways that He's called them to, because we believe that when we are all working within our God-given roles, we will see peace and we will see prosperity for everyone. And we need to walk in our God-given role. I think it's so incredibly important, whether we are in the home, whether we are in the workplace, whether we are in the church or in a park, that we understand the role that God has given us and that we value it. And by valuing it and by living it out in front of a watching world, that we are a testimony that God's ways are always better than anything that the world can come up with, that only He can satisfy, and that He has created the best way to live. So thank you for listening. That's the end of my presentation.